Okay, so without further ado, I am pleased to introduce our wonderful speaker, Manas Kshirsagar. Dr. Manas is a NAMA board certified Ayurvedic doctor. He comes from a Rig Vedic Brahmin tradition with extensive Ayurvedic background. He's an acclaimed wellness practitioner who has worked as an Ayurvedic consultant for many large companies and hospitals. He is also a health educator who is passionate about health and fitness. Dr. Manas has worked with clients of all age groups and specializes in lifestyle medicine. For the last 5 years, Manas has traveled the nation setting up protocols for Ayurvedic medicine in yoga studios, hospitals, and integrative wellness clinics. He believes that medical care should be personalized and that treatment plans need to be tailored to the individual rather than set in a standard protocol. Dr. Manas also believes that our mental and emotional state greatly affect our health and has led many patients from a state of chronic stress and disease to leading a more balanced, meaningful, and joyful life. We are so honored to have Dr. Manas as a clinical faculty member and a clinical supervisor for the Ayurvedic Health Counselor and Ayurvedic Practitioner programs here at Mount Madonna Institute. And we're so pleased to have him with us tonight to share his wisdom on ideal nutrition and digestion through Ayurveda. So welcome, Dr. Manas.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Caitlin. And again, on behalf of Mount Madonna Institute and the Mount Madonna Center, I welcome each and every one of you to an inaugural webinar series that we will continue doing on a regular basis for simply education. And everything that I have done, that Mount Madonna has been trying to do for so many decades, is simply increase awareness for the general population, the general public, on what Ayurveda and the Vedas really stand for. I know that this is a weird or an awkward circumstance to be meeting like this, all virtually. But I think that it's a beautiful thing that we're more connected than ever before, and we can reach thousands and thousands of people across the globe. So thank you for spending your evening, day, morning with me, wherever you are. You could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with me. You're here with us. So I appreciate that, and I thank you for that. Hopefully you will learn something, you will gain something beneficial, and apply it to a healthier and happier lifestyle. Let me see if I can share my screen so everybody can see what I see. If somebody could give me a thumbs up when you see my screen. Excellent, thank you. All right, so let's begin. We have a lot to cover tonight, short amount of time, but this is a topic that I'm very passionate about because it is something that pertains to each and every one of us, right? Nutrition, digestion is talked about so much in not just medicine, but even our day-to-day lives, our diet and digestion. And specifically Ayurveda and Ayurveda's standpoint on nutrition and diet and digestion is so different from the Western perspective that, and we'll take a look at some of the major differences, but the reason that Ayurveda differs so much and the reason that I really like talking about nutrition from an Ayurvedic standpoint is because it's so much more matter of fact. Okay, when I talk about diet, nutrition, daily routine, habits with my patients, with my clients, specifically regarding nutrition, I say things very simply or very casually, and they understand, right? Because it all stems from the exact same thing, and that is nature. We are made of nature, we are made by nature, we're made in nature. And so it's foolish to think that we should be nothing but all natural when it comes to our diet and digestion, specifically nutrition. Ayurveda, for those of you that don't know, is a very comprehensive and ancient system of healthcare. It postdates almost 6,000 years. And it is completely holistic, integrative, natural, complementary. These are all of the words that you hear nowadays, the buzzwords that you hear in modern medicine. Holistic, alternative, complementary. But in all honesty, it's the mother of all healing sciences. Even when you look at some of the main supplements out there, they're all derived from specific aspects of an herb or a plant or a root. And modern medicine, when I say modern, I mean allopathic Western medicine, has taken the most important aspect of that, the active ingredient, and removed it and tried to mass produce it. And we'll talk about why that is detrimental to us in the long run. But Ayurveda is completely preventative and therapeutic by nature, right? I always talk about how the downfall of modern medicine is what is turning people towards traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurveda or homeopathy or naturopathy. And the reason being is the way that modern medicine was created. The system of allopathic medicine was very different than what it is today, right? 100 years ago, only time you would go to the doctor is if you had an infection, if you had a disease, maybe an STD, something foreign to your body. You would go to the doctor, they would give you a shot or a pill, and you would go home and you would be fine. And so this is the same quick fix mentality that we're trying to apply to chronic conditions. Things like hypertension, things like dyslipidemia, things like diabetes, things that you don't wake up with overnight, but rather you have accumulated over the course of 5, 10, 15, even 50 years of your life. And we're using the same pill or injection or something like that to cure it overnight. And that's why that I say that health is a state of balance, because everything that you do, not just diet, nutrition, which is the focus of tonight's topic, but your habits, your routine, your stress management techniques, your exercise, are all fully integrated in what is your health. And we all know this to be true, whether it's from personal experience or friends or even celebrities. We know that health is a full-time job, and that there's no amount of wealth can fix that once your health becomes out of balance. And I'm grateful that more and more people are turning towards natural medicine, not just Ayurveda, but natural medicine as a whole, simply because it is giving that power back to you. Right? It's a bad business model, but I always tell people I don't like seeing my patients over and over again. The goal, my biggest responsibility is simply education. I want to be able to help you treat yourself, help you pick up on little imbalances that might occur without having the need to be blown into a full-blown disease or disorder. When you look at any of the latest research, study articles, you look at any of the big medical journals, they all say the exact same things, right? Make sure you move your body, make sure you manage your stress, make sure you get adequate rest and sleep, good quality sleep, and eat right. Whatever that eat right might mean for you and your specific dosha type or body constitution differs person to person, and we'll get into all of that here tonight. But it's as simple as eat right to be bright, to feel light. Now, before we talk about the doshas and what Ayurveda's perception of it is, I want to take a minute to define what diet means according to Ayurveda, and that is ahar. Ahar means any form of input, okay? So not just the foods that we eat, but the scary movie that you saw on TV, your favorite song that came on the radio, the relationships that you hold, anything that can be taken in through your sensorial input. Everything has to be broken down, digested, assimilated, and eliminated the same way that we do our food. And this includes your thoughts, emotions, information, all of these sensory inputs. And the reason your Pitta or your Agni specifically is so important is because hopefully we all poop every day, right? And so we're eliminating this waste every day. But can you say the same about emotional stressors or mental stressors? You can't necessarily control what someone says to you or how you react in a situation. And so making sure that you're able to assimilate and eliminate all of these things, this is what a comprehensive diet entails. Most of tonight, we're going to be talking about physical food, but pay attention to what you watch on the news. God forbid what you watch on the news. It's probably determined by which channel of news you watch. Who you surround yourself with, whether they are uplifting, whether they're joyful, whether they're happy, or they're always critical and pessimistic and rude by nature. Understanding what books to read or what music to listen to, and if that's beneficial for your physiology or if it's detrimental. So now let's take a look at the difference between East and West, right? And the reason this slide is in this PowerPoint presentation is because it's very important to understand the holistic approach that Ayurveda takes in order to look at your diet and digestion, okay? From a conventional nutrition standpoint, we look at personal preference, okay? Whether you like, let's say, meat or not, right? Whether it's habitual, whether you grew up eating steak and potatoes or whether you grew up in a vegetarian household. Body image, right? That's a lot going around right now where body positivity is revolving around diet and nutrition. And then emotion, how do you feel, right? I know that if I eat a lot of heavy, dense, either dairy or gluten-loaded meal, I feel very heavy. But from an Ayurvedic standpoint, the reason that we eat is to consume prana. Okay, prana is that life energy or life force. And whatever religion, whatever culture you want to call it, they have different names for it: prana, mana, chi, vitality. It all means the exact same thing. And that is simply to give yourself the nourishment that your body needs in order to not just survive, but live a happy and healthy life. When we look at the nutritional elements, everything in conventional nutrition can be broken down to calories. How many calories are in this, right? Whereas from an Ayurvedic standpoint, we look at the 5 elements, right? Whether this food is grounding, whether it's drying, whether it's heating. And as we dive into the 6 tastes and get a little bit deeper into this, you'll understand why those 5 elements are so basic in nature, but so crucial, because it simplifies your entire diet. We'll talk about the qualities here in just a second, but it's very rudimentary almost, talking about the elements when it comes to food. When you look at the focus in conventional medicine, it revolves around counting calories from your fats, your carbs, your proteins, and so on and so forth, right? From the different food groups. However, from an Ayurvedic nutritional standpoint, we look at Agni. Agni is your digestive fire, how much you can consume. And not just how much you can consume, but how much you can digest, right? In Ayurveda, we say, you are not what you eat, you are what you digest. And so your state of Agni will determine how well you're able to handle a food. The best example that I have of this is, maybe I'll wait. I know there's a slide coming up talking specifically about Agni, but it's very important to understand the focus of your digestive fire and in terms of appetite when you sit down for a meal from an Ayurvedic standpoint. The importance is mainly given to caloric value. The more nutrient dense a food is from a conventional nutritional standpoint, the healthier it is, right? Whereas from an Ayurvedic standpoint, even if the food is very healthy, but it opposes your individual constitution or is not good for your dosha type, then it's of very little or almost no use to you. And this, I think, is one of the biggest takeaways from this entire slide is even though a food might be healthy in the general scheme of things, even if a food is healthy, is it right for you? And only you can answer that question. Dietary advice, again, depends on the food group and the food pyramid, which we know and is being and has been proven to be incorrect. And then from Ayurveda, it depends on the taste, the rasa, and the quality of the food that you're eating, making sure that it's not just healthy, but you're able to digest, absorb, assimilate, and eliminate all of this food. And then lastly, the goal of conventional medicine is, like I said, you are what you eat, whereas in Ayurveda, you are what you digest. Here we go, Agni. So Agni is the main energy or the main component for the breakdown of food. And not just the breakdown of food like I talked about, but it helps with mind, emotions, thoughts, ideas, creativity, emotions, everything. It nourishes all of the doshas, okay? In Vata, it creates energy and creativity. In Pitta, it creates radiance and brightness or brilliance. And in Kapha, it creates strength and stability. And so when Agni is healthy, it's actually able to transform anything and everything into the healthiest version for your specific body constitution. Sounds like magic, doesn't it? But let's take a look at this image real quick. This is what I wanted to share in the slide before. Let's imagine that we have a campfire in front of us, okay? What happens when we fan the fire or blow on the fire? It increases. What happens when we pour gasoline on the fire? It'll blow up. And what happens when we, say, put one big, wet, heavy tree on the fire? It'll probably go out. But these are your three doshas. Vata is that fan, Pitta is that gasoline, and Kapha is that big, heavy tree. And dependent upon your daily routine, your exercise, your diet, your routine, your stress management techniques, everything that you do in a day dictates the shape and size of that campfire. And if you're able to turn that campfire into something as strong as this image, it's irrelevant what you eat. Your body will be able to digest it, break it down, and eliminate whatever is not necessary. But imagine if that campfire was just a small candle. Then it's irrelevant what you eat. Your body will not be able to break it down, digest it, assimilate any nutrients from it. And so working on cultivating that Agni, increasing that digestive fire, and really taking a look at how we can increase not just the breakdown of food, but assimilation of nutrients and healthy elimination, which I think is one of the least talked about aspects in conventional medicine. And whereas in Ayurveda, you know, it's probably one of the first things that any Ayurvedic practitioner will ask you: how do you poop? And it starts with Agni. So Mandagni is the weakening or the dampening of that digestive fire. And so let's take a look at what causes some of the, what are some of the causes of Mandagni. Okay, one is excessive fasting. There's been a lot of studies done on intermittent fasting and how beneficial that is, especially for gene regulation and really helping to cleanse the body. Normally, Agni gets nourished by the foods that we eat. Okay. However, when you don't eat for a prolonged period of time, that Agni weakens. If we look at this campfire in the previous slide, what would happen if we didn't tend to it? Let's say for 12 hours, let's say for 18 hours, maybe even 24 hours. It would die out. And we can't expect that just by pouring gasoline on it, that it will reignite to the same capacity that it was. We have to start from scratch. You have to rebuild that campfire back up. Use little twigs, use little kindling, build a small fire, and then add sticks and then some larger logs. But usually when people fast for a long period of time, their first meal back, they think, oh, I haven't eaten anything for 18 hours. Now I can eat whatever I want. And that's just not the case. Another one is irregular eating, either eating too often or eating infrequently. Right? Any type of erratic eating, irregular dietary routine, what it does is it creates an imbalance in your gut flora. There's two main hormones that are released, one to tell you when you're hungry and the other to tell you when you're full. And if you have an erratic diet schedule, right, when you're not eating breakfast, lunch, or dinner at the same time every day, these hormones have a difficult time regulating those hunger, the enteric nervous system, the hunger control. Ideally, the best, I guess, marker of a strong appetite or a healthy digestion is feeling hungry at the same time every day. Right. Another thing that will cause mandagni or a depleted campfire is heavy foods. Right. If you, like we talked about, if we put that one big wet heavy log, it'll dampen the fire. Same thing, if you're eating large amounts of pizza, pasta, heavy carbs, very heavy grounding foods, then you are dampening that digestive fire. Same thing with cold foods. There's a reason that ice is sort of disbarred in Ayurveda, and that's because of Agni. When you actually drink warm water, you are increasing that digestive fire, you're increasing your core body temperature, and you're allowing the body to digest food independent of diet, independent of what you eat, allowing the body to digest that food much easier and much quicker than you would if you drink cold foods or liquids. Why do we crave warm foods and drinks when we're sick? It's our body's way of saying, hey, look, give me something that's easy to digest, something that's closer to that core body temperature, that 97, 98 degrees, so that I can spend more energy, actual energy, kilocalories on your immune system and getting you better, and less energy on the breakdown of food, right? And the last one is dry foods. And the reason that this causes mandagni is because you need some sort of unctuousness, oiliness, some sort of lubrication in order to protect your gut lining and the food that you're eating from essentially burning up. We know what happens when we put absolutely dry kindling or say a newspaper on the fire. It shrivels up and dissipates immediately. And so when you eat dry foods, especially if you have a strong Agni, it burns through that very quickly. Now, before we move on really quickly, actually, let's talk about this slide and then I'll come back to what I wanted to say. So there's a component in Ayurveda that we talk about that's called ama. Ama is an endogenous toxin that results from incomplete digestion. Okay, think of it as the toxicity in your body, whether it is endogenous or even exogenous. If you live in a high polluted area, if you're eating foods that have herbicides, pesticides, treated with herbicides and pesticides, things like that, those are all exogenous forms of ama as well. But ama is initially formed in the digestive tract because this is everything that your body cannot break down, cannot digest, cannot assimilate, right? And what happens is this ama then is sent out, disseminates to the bodily tissues or your dhatus, right? And this next portion is probably the most important aspect of pathogenesis, or how disease is created. When that ama, when these toxins start to circulate throughout the bloodstream, they localize in specific tissues or specific areas of the physiology where there's either a predetermined weakness or a physiological weakness, and it disrupts that tissue function. And what happens when that tissue function is disrupted, it could be anywhere in the body. It could be the gut, it could be the blood, it could be the skin, it could be your liver, it could be your colon, anywhere. Right? It starts to cause these little imbalances. And those little imbalances then turn into chronic diseases and disorders. Let me give you an example. When you go to the doctor and you say you have pain, what's the first question they're going to ask you? Where? And unless you can point to a specific part of your body and say, I have pain here in my left shoulder, there's very little that we can do for you, right? Because if you say, well, sometimes it's here, and then other times it's here, and then other times it's here, well, the doctor is just going to laugh at you. And this is what that circulating ama looks like. When you have a little bit of ama, you're looking at random aches and pains, the feeling that something is not quite right, frequent congestion, feeling of laziness, lethargy, dullness, dampness, feeling of erratic digestion, whether it's constipation or loose stools, right? But there's nothing consistent. And so until it results into a dysfunction and into a disease or disorder, until it's diagnosable, there's very little that Western medicine can do for you. And the easiest way to check for ama, anybody know? Easiest way to check for ama is by looking at your tongue. Your tongue, when you brush your teeth in the morning, stick out your tongue, especially first thing in the morning. And you'll see a thin white film, right? Which is normal. Ama is created every single day, right? Because it's an endogenous toxin. That means it's formed in the body every single day. But the same way, ama should be eliminated every single day by making sure you're drinking healthy teas, exercising, eliminating properly through urine, stool, and sweat, all of these things, right? But if you have this thick white coating, right, that no matter how much you brush or how much you scrape your tongue, it doesn't go away. That's how you know that this ama is deep-seated and deep-rooted, and it's more than just in your digestive tract, but it has now disseminated into the tissues, into the dhatus. But the way that I want you to think about it is whatever coating is on your tongue, no matter how light or how thick, this is the same coating that lines your entire digestive tract, all the way down your throat, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, all the way out through your colon. Right? And as you begin either a detox or an Ayurvedic program or some sort of a cleanse, you'll see less and less of this gunk, of this stuff coming off your tongue. And that's how you know that you're healing your digestive system in totality. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about, going back to Agni and Ama, is why snacking specifically in Ayurveda is shunned, okay? And this doesn't go for everybody, but for the most part, Ayurveda doesn't like snacking. And there's a reason for that, okay? And to help you understand this, I'm gonna give you an example, okay? I wake up pretty early every morning, right? I usually wake up by about 5:30. And I wake up not because I have to pee or my alarm goes off, but I wake up because I'm hungry. right? And so I have to eat within 30 minutes of waking up. And so let's say I have a small breakfast of oatmeal, okay? Now, because I eat so early, around 10:30, 11 o'clock, I get pretty hungry. And let's say I reach for a protein bar, granola bar. Now, keep in mind, there's 3 stages to digestion. One is the actual process of digestion, or the breakdown of food. The second is assimilation, or extraction of nutrients. And then the third is elimination, right? So I just had this bowl of oatmeal for breakfast, and it usually takes about 2 to 4 hours, depending on your digestion, for this to move through your stomach and into your large intestine and begin that extraction of nutrient. Now, let's say that I eat this protein bar. Now, my body has 2 options, okay? One, it can increase the Agni in the body, that digestive fire. Hey, he just gave us new food. We have to break down this food. Let's kick up that digestive fire. Let's increase that Agni. Or it can say, no, we need to finish the assimilation or the extraction of nutrients for this previous meal that he ate. Let's keep the Agni where it is. Well, what happens in both of those scenarios? If my body decides to increase the Agni, we burn through all of the nutrients in that oatmeal. And that extraction process is, it happens too rapidly. Whereas if we decide not to increase that Agni and to focus on the extraction of those nutrients from the previous meal, that oatmeal, well, now that protein bar is just sitting in my stomach, mixing with the hydrochloric acid and the previous ama, and it starts to ferment and putrefy, increasing the level of ama in my gut. And unfortunately, you cannot tell your body which option to pick. And that is why we don't like snacking in Ayurveda. You should wait until all of the digestion and assimilation of nutrients has been done for a previous meal before you reintroduce fresh content into the stomach. I know there will be a lot of questions regarding this, but let's move on. The best way to get rid of ama is to fast, right? Not an entire 24, 36-hour fast, but the easiest way, especially if you have chronic ama or many, many years of ama, is to simply skip a meal. Okay, drinking warm water, drinking warm soups, teas, stews, broths, anything that, like I said, increases that core body temperature. It almost liquefies the ama. Okay, using digestive herbs such as ginger, black pepper, cumin, coriander, ginger, garlic. All of these will help increase your digestive fire, increase your Agni, as well as help with the breakdown of food. And then in chronic cases, you have to perform some deep cleansing or panchakarma to really draw that ama from your tissues, right, after it's been disseminated, from the tissues into the GI tract before flushing it all out. And for those of you that don't know, me and my family, both my parents are Ayurvedic physicians as well. We just wrote a book on panchakarma. So there's more information in the book. But now let's take a look at rasa. Rasa means taste or bhutic composition. This is what I think is sorely lacking in conventional nutrition, because we talk about sweet, sour, and salty as the main tastes, right? But very few people know what bitter or astringent or even pungent foods are. And when you eat in accordance with nature, and you eat a very healthy diet that is local, that is fresh, that is vital, you're actually consuming all 6 of these tastes. And each of these tastes can be broken down with each of the elements. Now, the reason this is important, and when we look at some of these words, right, gunas are the qualities that are found in nature, right? Like I said in the beginning, I say this matter-of-factly, and some of my patients they think that I must think that they're idiots because of the way that I explain this. But it's actually very simple. If you're feeling hot, eat something cooling. If you're feeling dry, eat something unctuous. If you're feeling heavy, eat something light. Like, this is obviously common sense, right? But we don't necessarily think about food in the same category. Or much worse, we don't necessarily think about ourselves in that category, right? We very few times, whether it's in the heat of summer or in the dead of winter, do we feel, oh, I'm burning up, or my stomach's on fire, or women who are menopausal or perimenopausal, they get hot flashes or anything like that. There's very few times where it's to an extreme that is noticeable enough for us to point out. And when you're able to understand what your dosha type is, and more importantly, what your vikriti is, or your current imbalance is, you're able to eat the tastes, according to what you're trying to balance. So let's take an example, sour, okay, amla. Sour, it actually increases the pitta dosha, but decreases the vata dosha. So for a pitta person in the middle of summer, the last thing they should be doing is, let's say, eating citrus fruits or eating fermented foods, anything that will increase that pitta. What should they be eating? Anything that decreases pitta, something sweet or astringent, or even better, bitter foods. Right? And once you understand this specifically to your constitution, also keep in mind, when I say your constitution, I do mean your prakriti, your innate body constitution. Your prakriti is something that will never change. Okay, it's your parents' fault. You're stuck with it. That's what you were born with. Your vikriti, however, is your current imbalance. That's what's going on in the body right now. At any given moment, your vikriti will fluctuate. And usually, whenever people fill out those online questionnaires or dosha quizzes or anything like that, you typically fill it out in your current state of being, state of mind. And so you're actually more prone to understanding what your vikriti is by taking one of those online quizzes. But I hope this makes sense. We'll talk about virya and vipak here in just a second, but essentially, rasa means taste, guna is quality, virya is potency. It's either hot or cold, whether a food is warming or cooling by nature. And then vipak is the post-digestive effect, how that herb, food, fruit, root, plant breaks down after the digestion process has taken place. And then prabhav is the special effect. It's something that's not necessarily accounted for. It's something that differs or changes person to person. And the best example that I can give of this is, again, another buzzword in conventional medicine, and that's adaptogenic, right? If you take ashwagandha versus me taking ashwagandha versus the third person taking ashwagandha, it will have a different prabhav in all three of us, because it will trigger what is most essential in our unique individual physiologies and provide just that. So let's take a look at what some of these yogic superfoods are. And more importantly, why they're called superfoods. Right? The traditional American diet, or the standard American diet, right? We know spells SAD, is a lot of processed foods. It's a lot of GMO laden bases, and it is really created to curate imbalances within the body. When we talk about superfoods, all it means is that these foods have the innate ability, when taken in proper amount, proper season, and proper time, they have the innate ability to actually change the way your body develops. And that is why they're called superfoods. These foods will give you the ability to really transform and change your entire diet, digestion, and in turn, your entire physiology. Whole grains, we talk about aged grains, right? Amaranth, brown rice, barley, oats, basmati rice, jasmine rice, kashi, quinoa. All of these are aged whole grains. These are very easy to digest. They are very beneficial for balancing both the vata dosha as well as satiating the pitta dosha because of how nourishing they can be. For those of you that are vegetarians, the majority of your proteins should come from beans, lentils, and legumes, right? Mung beans, black beans, kidney beans. And then as a rule of thumb, the smaller the bean, the easier it is to digest. And so I know a lot of people complain about, oh, you know, kidney beans or garbanzo beans, they give me gas. Well, either cook with more spices, two, make sure you soak them, but try a smaller bean or a lentil. Oils, we were always told that from a conventional standpoint, oil was bad for you, to stay away from oil. And now, over the course of the last 15 years, oh no, make sure you eat all of your healthy fats. Right? In Ayurveda, we know how beneficial ghee has been, internally, externally, as for your to perform a massage, to put in your eyes, everything to cook with. Extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, sesame oil, all of these are very healthy fats that will not only help with balancing cholesterol, but really oleate the body and keep everything moving the way that it's supposed to. Your leafy greens, any of your dark green leafy vegetables, spinach, kale, cilantro, bok choy, leeks, collard greens, all of these dark green leafy vegetables are full of antioxidants and full of nutrition that is very, very good in terms of a superfood for the majority of your vegetable intake. And then your cruciferous vegetables as well, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage. Again, for those of you that say it causes gas, make sure that you're either properly cooking with these foods or using enough spices and things to make sure that your body's able to digest them. Proteins, nuts, seeds, quinoa, all of these are superfoods because of their protein-packed sources, right? Protein per gram is very high in a lot of nuts and seeds. Your root vegetables, sweet potatoes, carrots, any of your root vegetables are very grounding. In wintertime, they should be taken in moderation. In summertime, they actually help to make sure that you manage that hunger, or the agni that naturally increases. And then colorful fruits, mangoes, kiwis, cantaloupe, pomegranate, avocado, dark sweet grapes, papaya, apple, all of these colorful vegetables, and making sure that you're eating a very comprehensive, a very colorful meal, right? There was actually a term that was coined called locavore. And a locavore is somebody who only eats foods found within, I think it's a 75 or 100-mile radius of where they live, right? Here, especially in California, we're spoiled because we can get food from all over the world, right? I used to go to school in Fairfield, Iowa, which was about 2 hours from the largest city, but we would always go to a sushi restaurant, and I would always ask, where the fish came from, right? But it's interesting because so many of these, colorful fruits or things that we talked about, they're not local. And so for us to be able to eat according to what's around us, it actually helps us stay in tune with those laws of nature, with the nature that is surrounding us. Colorful veggies, red and orange green peppers, bell peppers, tomatoes, artichokes, chilies, bok choy, different types of squashes, winter squashes, summer squashes, zucchinis, all of the colorful vegetables. Spices, turmeric, ginger, cinnamon, black pepper, cumin, coriander, your traditional spices, right? The biggest difficulty that I have in talking to patients regarding spices is the difference between hot versus spicy. Okay. Not temperature, but it's the example that I give is the difference between Mexican food versus something like Thai food or Indian food, right? Mexican food, they're both hot, they're both spicy, but Mexican food, a lot of the heat comes from fresh sources, fresh salsas, chilies, jalapenos, things like that, right? Whereas Thai food or Indian food, it's cooked into the curries, it's cooked into the sauces, and it's more of these traditional spices, like what you see here, that help with digestion. And so we want to avoid those hot foods like the jalapenos and salsas and chilies, but rather favor the more spices, traditional spices. Mixed nuts and seeds. We talked about seeds, but almonds, walnuts, pecans, macadamia nuts, Brazil nuts, pine nuts, cashews, all of these are very, very good in terms of superfoods to, one, satiate the body, but they can be used as a quick snack, either right after a meal, right before a meal, just to hold you over so that you're not making the same mistake that I am, eating a protein bar in the middle of breakfast and lunch. Dairy products. Again, this has been a controversial topic, specifically in conventional medicine, or conventional nutrition. But in Ayurveda, the reason that we like dairy so much is because it's considered a rasayana. It's considered very healthy and very beneficial for nourishment. For those of you that consume dairy, if you feel okay with it, as long as you are making sure that it's either boiled or adding a little bit of cinnamon, cardamom to it, maybe some turmeric and making a nice golden milk, or if you favor a nut milk of sorts, oat milk or coconut milk, almond milk, there is very little that you will see in terms of preference from a traditional Ayurvedic standpoint that favors nut milks over traditional dairy. And then berries, right? Blueberries, blackberries, cranberries, raspberries, strawberries, all of these have very high antioxidant qualities. They also have a variety of the tastes that we talked about as a part of the 6 tastes, whether it's the skin of these berries, whether it's the actual fruit, and making sure that you're consuming everything that we're talking about in variation, in rotation, and just eating a variety of fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds. And then just a couple sweeteners that we have that we prefer over traditional white sugar. Things like maple syrup, honey, jaggery, or suka nut. These are all more beneficial for you in the long run than traditional sugar. Let's take a look at some of the best spices for us. I think I have a specific slide for the tastes. But when we talk about spices for life, this is one of the best ways to really incorporate foods that you really enjoy without feeling guilty. Let me tell you a quick story. When I was younger, My mother is an excellent cook, for those of you that don't know her or that haven't had an opportunity to taste her food. But we were always blessed as kids to have homemade food. However, whenever we did go out, me and I have a younger sister, we would opt for the more heavy foods like pizzas, pastas, things that we didn't get at home. And whenever we would go out and our parents would indulge us, I would find that my father put a lot of black pepper or red chili flakes on his food, and I didn't really think anything of it. I didn't account for anything of it. I just figured, oh, he's Indian, he likes spicy food. That was it. That was the end of my thought process at the time. But as you learn, the more of these traditional spices that you incorporate in your food, the easier it is for you to actually digest and break down some of those heavier foods. Things like dairy, okay, is much easier to break down if you add a little bit of cinnamon or cardamom or turmeric into it. Things like wheat or gluten, bread is easier to break down and digest if you're incorporating some sort of spice, whether it's ginger or garlic or black pepper, something to increase the digestion as well as the absorption. And especially nowadays, I have a lot of people coming to me, a lot of people that we see in our practice that are intolerant of a lot of things. And while there are true and genuine allergies in a lot of people, what I've found is that these are newfound allergies, things that they weren't allergic to just last year or a few years ago. And the reason that your body stops the breakdown of food like that all of a sudden, or seemingly all of a sudden, is because of improper gut health, improper microbiome, or the gut flora in your stomach. And so when you eat spices, when you drink ginger tea, when you drink turmeric tea, when you drink CCF cumin, coriander, fennel tea, you're actually increasing the quality of the microbiome in your gut and increasing your quality of digestion in the long run. In the long scheme of things, it will be easier for you to digest and break down foods. And so the more traditional spices that you can incorporate, whether it's in tea form or even better, cooking, you will help with Agni and get rid of Ama, as well as increase your digestion. So now let's take a look at what these 6 tastes mean in accordance with the mind and emotions, right? This is a very traditional way of looking at, or not looking at, but rather understanding these tastes and what kind of an effect it has on the mind and what kind of effect it has on overindulgence. When you eat overly sweet foods, right, it creates a sense of attachment or possessiveness. Whereas when you balance that sweet taste, you're living in a sense of compassion and satisfaction and satiation. With sour, when you increase or overindulge in sour foods, it creates a lot of envy, jealousy, anger, rage. And when it's in moderation, you're actually better at discrimination, at increasing stimulation, and making sure that you're able to decipher and differentiate very well. Lavan is salty. Salty, it increases confidence. It increases your zest for life, so to speak. But again, overindulgence causes greed, overambition, possessiveness, things like that. Pungent, we know, is more of the spicy taste that people are familiar with, more so than pungent. But overindulgence in overly spicy foods causes anger, causes violence, increases hatred. But it's absolutely crucial for having that sense of confidence, of being bold, of being extroverted. Astringent tastes create a lot of insecurity or fear if you eat them in excess, whereas they create a sense of self-reflection and introversion when you are eating just enough. And lastly, bitter creates a sense of grief or sorrow if you eat too much of it. And the action on the mind is actually one of pure, not dissatisfaction as such. I don't really like that word, but it's very incriminating, or you're able to differentiate very well. And these tastes affect not just our physical body, but the emotions as well. And when we realize if we're experiencing any of these overindulgent emotions, they can be traced back to our foods. I know a lot of people who are very either angry or pissy or irritable, that their favorite foods are spicy foods. Or people who are very possessive by nature, consider themselves hoarders, right? They have this kapha tendency of really eating very sweet fruits, sweet foods. And so this understanding on the effects of the mind and emotions is crucial. So let's take a look at what some of the food recommendations are for the doshas themselves. Vata people should favor sweet, sour, and salty foods. They should avoid anything overly bitter, pungent, or astringent, and those are inherently drying, which is the last thing that we need for a Vata person. Now let's jump down to Kapha. Kapha should favor pungent, astringent, and bitter foods because that's what they need the most of. They need more of this weight loss-like, drying, lightening qualities, whereas the last thing that they need is anything sweet, sour, or salty. Sweet because it's kapha aggravating, salty because salt is naturally water retentive. And so we want to make sure that they're able to eat very light and kapha balancing foods. And then pitta in the middle should favor something sweet, astringent, and bitter, something that will satiate the pitta dosha without aggravating it or without creating an imbalance. Whereas they should avoid anything spicy, sour, salty. And the biggest reason for this is pitta digestion. We talked a little bit about mandagni, which is more of a kapha, just a dull, heavy digestive system. Pitta has a tendency to have tikshna agni. Tikshna agni means overactive digestive fire, right? These are the people that are always hungry. They'll be sitting at lunch, eating lunch, thinking about what's for dinner. They're also the people that tend to get hangry, for those of you that know that term. If you don't feed them or if they don't eat on time, they get very irritable and angry. And so pitta people have a very specific or set diet that they should consume. And then there's one more type of agni, which is called vishama agni, and that's the more of a variable agni, right? They'll be starving, ravenous for one meal, and then completely skip a meal or not even think about food. But their appetite fluctuates, their digestion fluctuates. They'll go from having a loose stool to constipation. They'll go from craving consistent, warm, soft foods to craving something salty and dry, like chips, crackers. And so really understanding, and that's what this balanced craving and imbalanced craving is really talking about, is when a Vata person is in balance, they will naturally crave the foods that are good for it. And if you are out of balance, you will naturally crave the foods that are bad for you. Same thing with Pitta and Kapha. And so there's, on any intake sheet that you look at from an Ayurvedic practitioner, there'll be a question that asks, what types of foods, what types of tastes do you crave? What are your favorite foods, right? And we can look at this and really use that information to look at what your balance or imbalance state of digestion is, specifically to your dosha. These are some of the key words: vata, pitta, and kapha, making sure that they're nourishing, healthy fats, unctuous, sweet, salty, grounding. For pitta, making sure that they're cooling, they're eating more grains, slightly oily, less spicy, something juicy. Bitter and astringent, making sure that they're eating heavy foods, foods heavy enough to satiate. Kapha, making sure that they're cleansing, eating less grains, eating more pungent, bitter, and lighter foods. And this is one of the biggest aspects that I think is not talked about. I know we're running out of time here, but and that is the enteric nervous system, okay, the brain-gut connection. And we look at everything from anxiety and depression to irritable bowel and upset stomach and IBS-like symptoms. All of these different diseases and disorders stem from the digestive system. And really being able to understand how your brain communicates with your gut and vice versa via these neurotransmitters has a tremendous impact on your health and vitality. And lastly, I would like to share the definition of health, right? Samadosha, sama agnisha, samadhatu malakriya, prasanna atma indriya manaha swasti iti abhidhiyate. This is the definition of perfect health, so to speak. When the three doshas, the Agni, the digestive fires, all of the dhatus, or the tissues and components, all of the malas, or the waste, the excretory functions, are in perfect order with a healthy mind, healthy and contented mind, sense, and spirit, mind, body, and emotion, mind, body, and soul. This is what creates absolute perfect health. As Baba Haridas said, the body is a boat which carries the soul in the ocean of the world. If it is not strong or it has a hole, then it cannot cross the ocean. So the first duty is to fix the boat. Your biggest responsibility is to take care of your health and wellness. Everything else that you do will be an effect of how healthy your boat is. So thank you. And again, on behalf of Mount Madonna Institute, I thank you for joining me on this inaugural webinar series on diet and digestion. And now I think if we have some time, we will open it up for some questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Manas. That was fantastic. And yeah, we have been getting some great questions coming into the chat, actually. So I'll start my video here. Yeah, so I'm gonna sort of summarize. We've had a couple of several similar kinds of questions come through. So I'll try to just summarize. I'll kind of just stick to 3 categories, and yeah, we'll try to have a follow-up that addresses some of the other common questions that we saw come through. So thank you everyone for being so engaged, and also for staying. So one question that a lot of folks were asking is just how to adapt and how to understand how to eat for someone who has, you know, 2 dominant doshas, or they feel that maybe they even, you know, have an equal combination of doshas. So what's the best way to get that balance?
Right. It's an excellent question, and probably the most asked question during this lecture. Let me start off by saying at any given time, everybody has one single vikriti, one current imbalance. In this moment, I'm giving a speech to 100 something people, I'm in a state of stress, right? Which means my vata is elevated, right? Which means anything I eat or drink in this moment should be to pacify the vata dosha, right? If, let's say, as a general rule of thumb, I am perfectly healthy, I have no vices, I'm able to manage my stress, I exercise regularly, I have a very healthy diet, right? I'm the epitome of perfect health. In that case, I would eat in predominance of my dosha. So let's say I'm predominantly pitta and then kapha. I would eat predominantly pitta balancing foods and then kapha balancing foods and then very little vata balancing foods. So it goes in sequence, sequential order of what your primary dosha is, then what your secondary dosha is, and what your tertiary dosha is.
Great. Thank you so much. Another question that I'll just sort of summarize, folks were sort of asking a similar, around the same vein, is people were wondering how to know when the assimilation of one meal is complete and you can feel confident that you have properly digested that meal, you're ready to move on to the next one.
The easiest way to tell is if that food nourishes you and you feel lighter and brighter, right? If you eat any food after about 2 to 4 hours, depending upon your speed of digestion, right? Within that 2-3 hour time frame, how do you feel? Do you feel like your body is really working very hard to break down that food and that you still feel kind of in a slump? Or do you feel you feel invigorated, you feel ready to run a marathon and you feel very happy and bright?
Great. Yeah, someone had also asked, does it depend on the kind of food? But it sounds like you're saying yes, and it also just depends on how you digested that food, right? Another couple folks were asking to shed some clarity on how many times a day it is recommended to eat in Ayurveda.
A mortal, is supposed to eat 3 times. Okay. A yogi is supposed to eat 2 times. And a sage is supposed to eat just once. This is the classical answer to your question, or to that question. Okay. However you categorize yourself, there's no judgment on my part. Okay. But as a rule of thumb, a lot of my patients, I usually recommend them having 3 meals a day. Whether that first meal needs to be staggered for them, which means just a little bit later in the day because they are exercising or because they do have a yoga practice, I do recommend sort of kind of like an adapted intermittent fast to where they're not eating until about 9-10 a.m. As their breakfast, and then having a larger meal at noon and then a small dinner early on.
Great. That sort of dovetails into another question that some folks were asking around fasting and, how much is recommended, intermittent versus complete, and maybe you just want to say a couple more words about that.
Yes, personally and professionally. Personally, I cannot say enough good things about fasting. Okay. I've tried it. I know that it works. I've seen a lot of research done on it. I've seen it in my own blood tests and things. But fasting is very individual, right? It has to be tailor-made for a specific person. And I'm talking about the traditional sense of fast, as in no calories. Right? I'm not talking about a juice fast or a fruit fast or anything like that. The reason being, fasting is looked at in every single religion across the board. Okay, is talked about. Every religion talks about fasting, and the reason being, upavas. Upavas means it's literally bringing you closer to God. And for the atheists out there, for those of you that don't believe in God, all it means is that it's simply bringing you closer to a sense of self. Okay, it forces you to listen to your body, because the only time that people really have a chance to listen to their body is when they're hungry. And when you increase the amount of times that that happens, it actually allows you to build a relationship, a narrative with your body, and allows you to communicate with yourself. And while I think fasting is great, I also don't think that it's for everybody. It can disrupt the agni of a very strong pitta person. It can create a variability of appetite, hunger, digestion for a vata person. It can completely eradicate any form of hunger for a kapha person, and even send them into a low-grade depression of sorts. And so it's very beneficial to a lot of people, but it should be done very carefully.
Thank you. That was a fantastic answer. My final question is someone that had asked, how do fermented foods fit into the picture here?
Fermented foods are great. It helps to increase that microbiome in your gut. Fermented foods also help to increase pitta, or agni, the digestive fire in your body, and making sure that you're eating a healthy amount, especially if you are eating foods that are more heavy, dense, grounding foods. Having some sort of a fermented food supplement, or even something like kefir or sauerkraut, anything like that, can be very beneficial to the digestive system. I usually recommend it specifically after any sort of a cleanse or a fast, because it helps to rekindle that agni as well.
Great. Thank you so much. And I'm going to wrap things up here now. Thank you again, Dr. Manas, so very much. And thank you for everyone who stayed on. I know we ran a little bit over time, but it was fantastic. And so I appreciate everyone staying with us, and also for such amazing participation in the Q&A. So again, I hope that this was a wonderful experience for everyone, and we'll be following up with everyone with some more resources as well. And as I mentioned in the beginning, this is the first webinar in a series, and our next one is on Saturday, October 10th. And Dr. Suhas, who is the chair of the College of Ayurveda, will be discussing detoxification and rejuvenation through Ayurveda. And we'll share more details in a follow-up email, and you can always go to our calendar page on our website to see what we have coming up. And if you're interested in learning more about Ayurveda and learning more about our educational programs here at Mount Madonna Institute, I invite you all to join us at our next virtual open house on October 14th. You'll be able to register to join on our website as well. This is a really great opportunity to connect with some faculty members and review our Ayurveda programs in detail. You can also see information about all of our Ayurveda programs online as well. So definitely spend some time on the website if you haven't already. I will say that the Ayurveda Health Counselor program, which is our foundational level training, is the pathway to the practitioner, masters, and the Ayurveda Yoga Therapy programs. And our next AHC program starts January 21st, 2021. And I also invite you to check out our online herb store, Ayurveda World. You can find a wide variety of Ayurvedic herbal products, tinctures, oils, herbal compounds, etc., and can even order specific herbal formulations upon request. And they are open virtually right now, so that's a great way to connect with them. Finally, we'd love for you to support MMI. We are a nonprofit institute dedicated to providing experiential and transformational learning, and your gifts will support the sustainability and scholarship for students here. So thank you again to everyone, and we really hope to see you at the next webinar. Good night, sleep well. Thank you so much, Manas, for kicking us off. This was a fantastic evening. Bye, everybody.